Okay. Apparently the Canucks are aggressively trying to make some moves. Well, guess what? Apologies to the listeners there, but we got some breaking news, okay? We recorded the episode, but we've hopped back in here in the studio because Tanner Pearson, who we talk about on this episode, has been traded to the Montreal Canadiens along with another draft pick. The Canucks trade Tanner Pearson and a 2025 third-round draft pick to the Montreal Canadiens for goaltender Casey DeSmith. What is going on? Another draft pick traded by the Vancouver Canucks, but really the clear benefit here is that Tanner Pearson and his $3.25 million cap hit are off the roster. The cost of doing that was a 2025 third round pick, and the Canucks pick up Casey DeSmith, who has 1 year left on a $1.8 million deal. Kyle, let's throw it to you. What were your first initial thoughts when you heard the news here?
Initial thoughts right away. Pissed off. Absolutely pissed off, because this is the complete opposite of what I wanted the Canucks to do, and that's find a way to get under the cap by not giving up any draft capital. But you know the saying, Trevor Beggs, okay? Dreams do not come true. They don't come true. That being said, after sitting down with it just a little bit, I've always said over the last, handful of months that the Canucks need to win this season. And it's easier to win with a more established backup. And that is what they have here. This guy's played a lot of games. I don't have the stats in front of me. I had them in front of me 2 minutes ago. Maybe Trevor Beggs can Google it while I do some talking right here. But it seems as if the Canucks got their guy to back up Thatcher Demko to play at least 15 to 20 games and do so the right way without having the unpredictable nature of things being if, Spencer Martin was your backup or if Silovs was your backup. There's a little bit more stability there that makes this team a little bit better. But again, that being said, this third round pick hurts a lot because you're really banking in on everything happening this season the right way. And even if it does happen the right way, you lose the ability to have another asset in the draft that you can develop into a cheap player during the times where the Canucks are competing for a Stanley Cup. And that's a scary thing. Keep in mind, when the Canucks are competing for a Stanley Cup, if all goes well, OEL is going to cost this team a lot of money. The depth did take a hit, but they're doing it for this season. They're doing it to ensure a playoff spot somehow, some way. And they're doing so because they need to impress Pettersson. A lot of things going on, man. I know it sounds so crazy, but I mean, it can't sit well with you that once again, the Canucks are giving up a third round pick.
Yeah, not a huge fan of that because this isn't just a one-off. We've seen Alvin kind of consistently do this, trade away a third, trade away a second. I guess in his defense, he's picked up some picks and prospects along the way, but they tend to be more like fourth-round picks, or a guy like Josh Bloom, who they acquired from the Buffalo Sabres, who was a third-round pick. Look, at the end of the day, I get it, and here's how I'm kind of looking at the trade in a nutshell. Because the Canucks saved $1.5 million in cap space here, roughly. They were about $1.7 million over the cap, but that was based on cap-friendly projections. That can change around a bit. They're basically cap compliant now. But that $1.5 million, you know what, Kyle? You know who cost $1.6 million was Pius Suter. So I kind of look at this trade being the cap space that allowed the Canucks to get Pius Suter under the cap. So if you look at it through this lens, say Tanner Pearson and that 2025 third round pick for Casey DeSmith and Pius Suter, now obviously that's not the trade. Does that make you feel any differently about it?
First of all, Trevor, it's Pius Suter, okay?
Oh, it's Pius. Yeah, I know. Sorry. I listed that in my fun facts article.
Somebody, Jay, if I said Pius Suter, that guy Jay, he would have roasted me. He would have demanded that I get booted off this program, okay? But since you said it, he's probably going to pat you on the back. Isn't that right, Jay? It's okay, Trevor, if you pronounce our players wrong. Okay, you put it that way. And you're just taking the optimistic approach. And all in all, I think it's safe to say that back in the day when Alvin said, oh, don't worry, we'll be cap compliant, I don't think he was saying that foreshadowing a trade like this. I think he was saying that because he assumed that Pearson wasn't going to be healthy. And then, I don't know, man. My mind is all over the place. And just losing draft capital wasn't in my cards, but I guess, again, I said, dreams don't come true, but I think in reality, there was no other way for this team to do it. There was no other way other than waiving No, they could have waived Tanner Pearson and done him quote unquote dirty and then gone into the season with an unpredictable backup, which wouldn't really bode well for certainty because things kind of have to like be in place this season, right? They can't be scrambling in October, November if Spencer Martin's struggling right away, you know? So in essence, I guess what I'm trying to say, or I'm going to ask you and listeners, let us know in the comments below. The Canucks became a better team today because of this trade and also because of Tanner Pearson not being in their lineup and giving the likes of Podkolzin and Höglander some younger blood, some faster legs, a chance to actually have a legitimate leash again in being in the lineup.
Yeah, the Canucks did become a better team today. And again, I know we don't like to see draft picks traded, but I'll say this, and I'm going to go glass half full again, and love me or hate me for it. But when we saw Jim Benning pissing away draft picks early in his tenure, he did it with a team that was clearly at the end of their life cycle and needed to start rebuilding and start stockpiling picks. Now, the Canucks, you could argue in a similar situation in the sense that they have a pretty shallow prospect pool and they continually trade away draft picks, which isn't good. But the Canucks need to win. They need to start winning, okay? I think the window for them is starting to open up in a sense. It's not quite open yet. They don't have quite enough skill, but they're on the path to having that window open, not towards that window being closed. So, and I think another glass half full take here. Optimistic Beggsy here today. Usually I'm the darkest guy in the program. But I think the Canucks have done a good job of stockpiling the prospect pool through free agent signings, right? Like we talked about R.C. Baines, Philip Johansson, Nikito Hirose, Cole McWard. Like these guys have kind of shown promise in their own way. Neil Zaman. Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say that, buddy. So in a way, they've stockpiled without having to use the draft. So I think this organization can stomach trading these picks. Now, I hated the second round pick that they attached to Dickinson last year. But the third round pick, I feel a little bit better about, especially considering it's 2025.
And especially considering that they were able to use that draft capital and pick up a player that isn't a winger. You know what I'm saying? Like it actually fills up a void that they needed filled on this team. Theoretically, I mean, I guess they could have gone into the season taking their chances on hindering Silovs' development, possibly, and just rolling the dice with Spencer Martin again. But this time around, I don't have the stats in front of me. I wish I did. Trevor, do you mind googling it if you have them in front of you? Or
yeah, for Casey DeSmith.
Yeah, it seems as if he's like he's an NHLer in his role.
Yeah, and up until last season he was about a league average backup, 0.4 goals saved above average. So yeah, pretty much exactly a league average goalie last season. But the 4 years prior to that, you could argue he was an above average backup. Goals saved above average was above the average in each of his seasons. I know he had posted almost 8 shutouts, which is pretty good for a guy who's playing, just a handful of games per season, and his save percentage was above average in each one of those seasons. So he's going to be 32. But at the end of the day, like you said, Kyle, the Canucks can't be messing around with the backup goaltending situation. We've been talking about Martin versus Silovs. I don't think either option. They both came with risks, right? And Martin had a bad season. Silovs is very young. I think just having another goaltender in the system is a bonus. And honestly, I still think it's an open competition in training camp.
No.
Hear me out. Hear me out.
Okay.
If Spencer Martin outplays Casey DeSmith is the easier guy to waive because no one's going to want to pick up a $1.8 million backup goaltending contract. And if they get him out of the minors, they're going to save another 1.1 million, or the whole 1.8 is off the roster. So I do think it's still an open competition because if Martin and Casey DeSmith play at exactly the same level, why wouldn't they go with Martin? He's cheaper.
I think only because of more games played and more of a sample size for Casey DeSmith, and also Alvin and Rutherford and company, like because they made the trade and they traded draft capital with it, like they gotta say that this is their guy, and that would give me a lot of confidence for real. Because the only reason that I'm not breaking my computer screen right now is because they filled up a spot that I think was a little unpredictable. That could have been a little bit of a problem, and that's the backup goaltending situation. This guy's not the best backup goal. Like he's not Swayman or what, you know what I'm saying? He's not that guy of last year, but it's a competent dude who's played a lot of games in recent history based on, again, being a backup goaltender. And I think it kind of gives them more promise and more sureness in that position. All in all, And we're going to get to this during the rest of the episode, or episode that was recorded a couple hours before the trade. I still think the episode makes a lot of sense based on the talking points. And after you do listen to it, let us know in the comments below if this is the case. And it was alluded to so many times. Okay. Are the Canucks a better team? And me and Trevor got into it. Seriously, I almost ended my friendship with Trevor in about 15 minutes when we were arguing about the Tanner Pearson situation and how, like, they could, put Podkolzin down and blah, 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 or possibly trade Beauvillier or Garland. And it's like, dude, the whole point of this season is to ice the best lineup possible. And Tanner Pearson was holding them back if his contract was the only reason he was going to make the team. And the Canucks, because they got rid of it and are allowed to keep Beauvillier and Garland and Höglander and Podkolzin, those guys can all make the team now. I looked at a tweet. Sat tweeted it out. Tucker Pullman on LTIR with all those guys that I just noted. If they make the team, the Canucks are going to be under the cap by $300,000. Okay. So all in all, the Canucks are a faster team. They're a better team. They're icing their best lineup, and they're not being sensitive to the notion that they owe Tanner Pearson something, because this is the NHL. This is sports. We just saw what Vegas did. It is what it is. This team needs to win, not be nice.
Well, the Canucks listen to you, buddy. I know I did suggest, again, you're going to hear it coming up here very shortly. I did suggest trading a player other than Pearson, potentially for pennies on the dollar. And the Canucks we're going to attach a draft pick sweetener route. So maybe let's get into that now. We did talk about what moves the Canucks need to be made before they made the Pearson trade, but all kinds of roster talk. Also touch on young stars coming up. That's all coming up next here on Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Thanks for hitting the play button on today's episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, Canucks writer for Daily Hive Vancouver, and one half of the team here on Locked On Canucks. Before we dive into the show, we got to thank you for tuning into Locked On Canucks. It's your team every single day, baby. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, we were going to lead the show talking about young stars, but got to talk about the moves, okay? The moves, the grooves. What's going to happen with those Canucks? They are over the cap. We talked about that. Every dayers know. And apparently, according to Rick Dhaliwal from CHEK TV and the Donnie and Dolly podcast, the Canucks are aggressively trying to make a move. We're going to tell you some candidates who could be on their way out from the Vancouver Canucks roster before the season even begins. And like I said, we'll touch on young stars and which players from young stars we see playing NHL games next year for your Vancouver Canucks. But before I do that, let me introduce my co-host. No, he's not playing NHL games next year, but maybe another Surrey boy will. But anyways, Kyle Bhawan, how you doing, brother?
Right, I'm gonna have to live. What's the word? Vicariously? Is that it?
Vicariously.
Oh, my bad.
Vicariously.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
That's a new one. That's a new one. Okay, through RT Baines, and when he's making his debut for the Vancouver Canucks, all of Surrey makes their debut for the Vancouver Canucks. But that's a story for about. I was gonna say another day, but maybe in 15 minutes. Okay. Anyways, Kyle Bhawan, Trevor Beggs, your Canucks every day. We'll get the comment corner at the end of the program, but we got to get into this, man. We got to get into this. Okay. First of all, I feel like dancing. I feel like moving. You gotta dance in this thing called your life if you want to get the energy levels up. All right. Optimism is in the moves. And second, I think I want to have a little bit of a debate with Trevor, man. You can't assume that that's where this conversation is going to go, because you and I never really prep for this. But I feel as if you and I are thinking a little differently about the Canucks needing to make a trade to get under the cap. Anyways, I'll let you start this conversation off by asking you this question. Like, do you actually think it's going to happen? Are the Canucks going to make this aggressive trade to get rid of cap space?
Well, I would say it's probably at least a 50% probability. We saw it last offseason, right, with Jason Dickinson. I mean, the template is there with this management regime that's in place right now. And I mean, you look at the Canucks right now, and with basically, they're over the cap by about $1.7 million. So it's tight right now in Vancouver. Okay, but that being said, you can make a couple moves and figure it out here. First and foremost, if you look at cap friendly, Makhayev's on injured reserve, but counting towards the cap. Let's say he starts the season on the 23-man roster. You put down a Sheldon Dries, you got $946,000 in cap space. And now it's really putting down one player with a $1.15 million salary, right? And that's the big thing here, right? You're either putting two players down in the minors and having 21 guys on your roster, which is thin, right? For the casual fans out there, you dress 20 players a game, right? 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, 2 goaltenders. You're going to have one healthy scratch up with your active roster would be not unheard of in this cap-strapped era, but it's possible. But that being said, I think I'm not surprised that the Canucks are aggressively trying to make a move, because I think they've been trying to aggressively make moves for a while. I mean, look, they got Connor Garland still. They have Anthony Beauvillier. I'm sure they would love to trade Tyler Myers. They would love to trade Tanner Pearson. Are all of those going to happen? No, of course not. Could one of those happen? Potentially.
Dude, I think this team was clearly not expecting Tanner Pearson to be this healthy and off of LTIR come September. For real. Now, I actually am on that boat, and I've been on this boat for a while. I don't want these guys to make a trade. Hence why I think they're not going to do it. I'm just gonna stick to my train of thought on that, and that's because I don't want this team, who hasn't done anything in the standings for years, to go ahead and trade another 3rd or 4th round pick along with one of these salaries just to get under the cap this season. There's another way, and it's by waivers, isn't it? Isn't it just by dumping one of these guys down in Abbotsford? Theoretically, it could be Pearson or Myers. Again, the Canucks, if they want to get rid of salary via the trade, it's going to cost them too much. Too much is maybe not too much in your eyes if you're listening to me and hearing me talk about, I don't want these guys getting rid of another draft pick. But, bro, the Canucks haven't done ish in a long time. And, bro, if they want to do things in the future, after they take the next step this season and they have to take 2 or 3 more steps in the seasons afterwards, they need cost-effective players. They need draft picks. It's just the truth, and I don't want to see this version of the Vancouver Canucks do it again, and that's have poor asset management. It's just the truth. It would frustrate me. It would piss me off, because isn't the easiest option like, okay, let's just waive Myers. Let's just waive Tanner Pearson.
I'm going to tell you why I think that's not going to happen. And I'll start with Tyler Myers. As much as we like to poo-poo on Tyler Myers in this market, I was going to say he's still a credible NHL defenseman. I'm not even quite sold on that. But I think the Canucks are going to look at that third pairing and say, are we really going to roll out a third pairing of like Akito Hirose and Matt Irwin? I mean, the answer might be maybe, but like that's a pretty thin looking third pairing. Not one you necessarily want to ice if you plan on being a playoff team or a contending team. I'm not saying Myers makes it that much better, but I'm probably saying that's the Canucks mentality right now. And I think Myers, again, I'm going to assume he's a kind of a leader of veteran presence in that locker room. And I think for the Canucks, I could see the room being even more pissed off if Tanner Pearson gets waived, right? Like Quinn Hughes went to bat for this guy last season. He's probably considered a leader in that dressing room too. This guy, after all he's been through, to make the comeback and then get waived, I get it. He's got to earn his spot on this team. But the closer we get to training camp and having to make these tough decisions, I have a really, really hard time seeing them waiving a guy like Tanner Pearson. And even if they do waive one of these players and they come cap compliant, they're going to barely be cap compliant and have 22 guys on the roster.
Yeah, it's better than not being cap compliant. And I get it. You're right. Hughes pretty outspoken about the Pearson situation. The room loves him. And yeah, that could leave a sour taste. But you know what fixes that? Winning. And it's not just about putting Pearson into the minors for the sake of salary cap compliancy. It's also me saying that because, bro, we got other players, faster players. You know what I'm saying? And maybe it's best for this team, who still has to really, really focus on the future and development, to give Podkolzin and Höglander like a fair opportunity. They got to deserve it, don't get me wrong. But let's just say Höglander or Podkolzin outperform Pearson. They got to pick those guys over Pearson and take the emotional backlash that they might take if they, again, dump a leader like Pearson in the minors. That being said, again, winning fixes everything. Now, I did hear something. I don't know if it was like Farhan or J-Pat. I'm sorry if I'm I'm saying the names wrong here, but one of them did say that, oh, Pearson is a Rick Tocchet type of player. And I'm like, really? Really? I don't think so. Is Pearson a Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin type of guy? They traded Eric Goodbranson. They traded for Eric Goodbranson and gave away Tanner Pearson. So I could definitely see that happening. And I know it would ruffle a lot of feathers, and maybe for a team that doesn't necessarily need another story outside the game to be a part of their equation, especially early on in the season, because this would be a story, right? You talk about the injury concerns and the mishandling, and now fast forward to September, this guy's worked his ass off, and now you're going to waive him. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a story, but it's professional sports, man. It is what it is. And if you're icing the best lineup and you can get more dubs because you have faster players, younger players, and you're developing guys like Podkolzin and Höglander who have to be developed, I feel as if the Canucks won't be hurting from a Pearson demotion for that long.
No, I don't think it's going to hurt their lineup, because I'm not even sure what this guy's going to look like. To be honest, before his hand injury last season, I know he only played 16 games, but he played like poo-poo in those games. Again, family show here, so excuse my kitty talk. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Pearson does have to earn it. I know it's going to be a really tough decision if it comes to having to cut Pearson, but I have a really hard time seeing them waive him. You talked about, I completely agree with you, Kyle. I don't want to see the Canucks, trade, like attaching draft picks to get rid of guys. They're already so thin on draft picks as it is. I mean, I think the best case scenario, and I don't want to wish ill health on anybody, is that there's a training camp injury. Someone loses a top six winger on another team. And it's like maybe there's a trade for like Beauvillier or Garland out there. That's kind of like a best case.
I don't know if that's best case, man. I really don't think that's best case, because you're making your team worse. And this season matters so much. It matters so much, man.
Look how many pricey wingers they have. Like you can afford to get rid of a Beauvillier or Garland.
But can they afford to get worse as a hockey team? Is this the season to do that? No. The answer is no.
How much worse are you going to be? Like I see those guys as blockades for someone like Nils Höglander.
Okay.
Right. And again, if you're talking about the Canucks making a move, they got to clear someone with cap space. There's no point in trading someone like, just throwing out there, like a Podkolzin or a Joshua, or someone making under $1 million, because to get out of their cap conundrum, they need to trade guys making above that, $1.15 million, guys that you can't stash their full contract in the minors.
Yeah. Look, I think if this organization has been desperately trying to get rid of cap space, and Tyler Myers seems to be that guy that they've been trying to shop, as the rumors state, maybe they're not that high on it anyways, and maybe it's not the worst case scenario if they're icing a 5-6 pairing of AHL player, quote unquote, Hirose Wolanin and the next guy up. I don't know. Maybe they're not high on Myers and they can swallow that pill, and Tocchet and his coaching staff can do a good job, and this team can get better, because Myers last year was an anchor. He was a reason why the Canucks were really bad. Hey, Tanner Pearson, before the injury, he was one of the worst players in the NHL. This guy, I feel as if he led the league in minor penalties. He was bad. They got to ice their best lineup. And if you're going to hurt some feelings, it is what it is. Because this season matters way too much. Why? Because they got to sign Elias Pettersson. They got to do it, man. They got to do it. It's just the truth. And like, how are they going to sign Elias Pettersson? Is it like being competitive and things are changing and the mood's brighter, and you get to the last game of the season and you're fighting for a playoff spot and you don't make it? No, like, you have to make it. And when you make it, you better have a good team still, so you can compete in round one. So you can, kind of show Pettersson like, there's a lot here. There's a lot here, or there's something here. This wasn't just a fluke. And to get there, you got to ice your best lineup. And I truly do believe that Pearson or Myers don't make this team better. They don't.
I like where you're coming from, Kyle. Maybe, listen, you listening right now, whether it's on Spotify or YouTube, leave us a comment and let us know how you feel. Do you think Tanner Pearson and Tyler Myers should be on the Canucks roster next season? Can you realistically see them playing AHL games next season? Let us know. Speaking of guys in the AHL, the Canucks just had their Young Stars tournament, and there's definitely the most experienced Young Stars roster of the 4 teams there. We want to talk about a couple of guys who really stood out, who are likely to play NHL games for the Canucks next season. But first, I got to talk about FanDuel, okay? Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place a $5 bet, just $5. That's all you got to do. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. I got to say, my Seattle Seahawks, we're decent underdogs against the Detroit Lions, okay? I know Kyle is the Detroit Lions, his least favorite team in the NFL. Well, guess what? The Seattle Seahawks did it for you, Kyle. As much as the Seahawks are your second most hated team in the NFL, they did it for you, buddy. But you know what? If you put some money down on the Seahawks last weekend, A, I hope you did it on FanDuel, and B, you might have made a few bucks because they were 5.5-point dogs, baby, but still got the win. So when you're on FanDuel, there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, overs, unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
People, before we get back to the show, baby, I gotta tell you that new episodes of Locked On Canucks will be available wherever you stream podcasts and on YouTube at 4:20 p.m. for no reason at all, okay? New episodes every day at 4:20 p.m. Again, wherever you stream podcasts and on YouTube. Let's get back to the show. Okay. We are back on Locked On Canucks. It's your Canucks every day. Trevor Beggs and Kyle Bhawan talking about the future of the Vancouver Canucks. And before we really dive into the other side of the future of the Vancouver Canucks, these young stars, I want to ask Trevor again, like this whole fascination around a trade and possibly giving up one of your better wingers. I know they're mushy middle type of wingers, like they're 83 overall, 84 overall. We're talking about Beauvillier, Garland. I'll throw Besser in that mix too. Is there any world where they can trade one of those guys and get someone back who's maybe like equally as good on the low end, who's making a couple $1 million less or $1 million less just to get under the cap? Like, I don't know if you have those players in your mind, but maybe that's a trade that can be made so that way they can still ensure that they're icing their best possible lineup, because that matters for a team that needs a lot of things to go their way. Like, we talk about fitness, we talk about luck. Another way to get to a point where you're winning games is again, just icing your most talented lineup. And I just don't want to see this team sacrificing one of those guys over Pearson or Myers. Any players out there that you could see the Canucks bring in?
So in terms of someone who's equally as good but at a lesser cap hit, not a chance, just because cap space means everything in today's NHL. True. I think what I could see is one of those guys being traded for a prospect, maybe in that 22, 23 years old range, who hasn't quite panned out, who still has some potential. It'll be one of those guys, it'll be like acquiring a Sven Berchi type, someone who hasn't quite worked out. But you bring him in and kind of give him a shot because he's making less money. And I mean, like, you look right now, like so many teams are cap strapped right now. So I'm not quite sure who would acquire him. Like maybe Nashville's they have cap space right now. They're valuing that veteran presence. They bring in Luke Shen, they bring in Ryan O'Reilly. Like maybe they have a prospect who kind of fits that mold of a guy who hasn't quite worked out. Like, I'm just looking at their prospects right now. I remember scouting this guy a bit before the draft. Jakim Kondoleek. He's like a massive 6'7", 220-pound winger, like someone like that who's just like kind of middling AHL production, but maybe you give him a shot if you can offload one of those contracts. It would be one of those trades. It's not going to be a guy who's of equal value.
Damn.
Sorry, buddy.
No. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, man. That makes a lot of sense. It is what it is. I'm just thinking, man. I'm just thinking, and you made a really good point. That's kind of swaying me the other way because you don't want to jeopardize the room and you don't want to piss people off. Like you said, if they do the worst and they waive Tanner Pearson, what's Quinn Hughes going to say, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, win hockey games, Quinn. Win hockey games. Same thing with Pettersson, like win hockey games. It's going to hurt for a bit, but winning fixes everything. And just win hockey games. Focus on that. And Höglander and Podkolzin can help you do that probably better than Tanner Pearson. I know I'm talking a little more, like I'm talking a lot of ish against Tanner Pearson. Go ahead and prove me wrong. Do it. Go ahead. I don't care. I'm down to get slapped in the face. Okay. I like it rough. Anyways, young stars talk.
Kyle did say he's bi-curious.
Oh, buddy. Oh. Hey, man. Straighter than a ruler.
Oh, vicarious. Oh, my bad.
Shout out to my girl. Okay, shout out to my girl. Okay, so young stars turning. One person that stood out, not because I watched the games because I didn't, but just because of the stat line, was Akito Hirose.
Yeah.
5
Yeah,
points.
and he stood out based on the eye test too.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So I guess who else stood out for you? And if you want to touch more on Akito, here's the floor.
Yeah, I think Akito Hirose was arguably the most polished. Actually, I'm going to say Akito Hirose and Aidan McDonough were definitely the two players who stood out to me most. Aidan McDonough looked like it was kind of like men against boys. Like he was a level ahead of everyone in terms of his puck skills, his ability to get that shot off to find space. I mean, again, we're playing against a lot of guys like who are Calgary's average age of roster was like 18, whereas the other teams were all around 20. So Calgary really had a green lineup. And it showed, right? The Canucks, smoked him 7-1 in the one game they played against Calgary. But McDonough, again, he's 24 or turning 24 this year. Like he's not a spring chicken anymore, as they say. But he's got a chance of playing NHL games next year, and he might be a guy to watch in Canucks training camp. He's warmed up, he's looking good out there. And as for Akito Hirose, he's also another guy who could push for a roster spot. I think there's a lot of people who think he might have the leg up in terms of that third pairing left defense spot. I mean, his poise is really evident out there. Like, doesn't make a lot of bad plays. Again, a little undersized, so I think that kind of stood out to me during NHL games last season. But yeah, I think Akito Hirose definitely has probably as good a chance of any player in this tournament of making an NHL roster, not just on the Canucks, but the 4 teams that joined the tournament. Kyle, I'm going to throw it back to you quickly. I'm going to list off some names. I want you to tell me how many of these guys you think are playing NHL games next season, because I think these guys might be on the cusp. Arshdeep Bains, Danila Klimovich, Aidan McDonough, Atu Ratu, Akito Hirose, Philip Johansson, Cole McWard. So I listed off 4 forwards, 3 defensemen. How many of those 7 do you think play NHL games for the Canucks this upcoming season?
I think this. Okay, I'm going to say 2. 2.
Okay.
Akito, Arshdeep, for sure. If I say any more, like there's a lot of injuries, then I know that happens, but I think the safe pick is 2. And I think there's a good chance Akito just starts with the team, man. I mean, not that they're competing with each other, but theoretically speaking, like who had more good games last year, Tyler Myers or Akito Hirose? Like more mistake-free games, more simple games. That's what you need from that third pairing, to start there. I'm not going to go out and say that Akito is always going to be just a third pairing guy, a quiet guy, but if you're playing that role, you got to play it safe and effective. And again, who had more mistake-free games? I think Akito, even though you played a couple. It's just the truth, man. This guy was a liability, bro. He was a GIF for all the wrong reasons.
There was, I think there's about 2 Tyler Myers games last season where I'm like, damn, Myers is on one tonight. But that was about it. I've said this before, but I'm kind of curious to see Tyler Myers in more of a third pairing role. Like maybe that's a bit better for him. But when he played with Hirose last season, I think we all talked about how great Hirose was. But the underlying numbers for those two were pretty brutal because I think Tyler Myers just struggles to read the play and move the puck up the ice. And Akito was hit and miss, right? Because he's a young guy in the NHL. I think saying that two of those guys of the 7 I listed to play NHL games is a safe bet. I was going to say 3. I was going to say Arshdeep, Aidan, and Akito. But that being said, Arshdeep and Aidan McDonough play the same position, left wing. So maybe there's some versatility based on injuries. But again, they got a decent amount of winger depth on this team. And like we said at the top of the show, if they're able to move a winger or if they waive a winger like Pearson and start looking to the future, maybe one of those young guys just earns their way up, forces their way up. Maybe it's a different story, but right now there's a glut of wingers in Vancouver, right? Not even just the 8 guys think are going to make the roster, but like the DiGiuseppes, the Jack Stutnikas, the Hoaglanders, the Podkolzins. Like there's a lot of wingers on this team.
Oh yeah, there's so many, man.
Too many, some might say.
For sure, too many. For sure, man. I know I'm beating a dead horse here. That's what they say too, right? You said the spring chicken thing, and I said a dead horse. So first of all, who made that one up? I know I'm beating up a dead horse. Like, dude, what the? That definitely came from like the 1700s and survived.
Yeah.
And what, are chickens only born in the spring?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe our listeners can help us out. I'm not quite sure where the spring chicken comes from.
Man, I heard that they just approved. I don't know if this is true or not. Okay, somebody's got to fact check me. Okay, I heard that they approved that you can now sell fake chicken at Superstore and Walmart.
What is fake chicken? Isn't that just tofu?
No, like something else, man. Something
This
like
is what happens when
bones.
two sports guys start talking about something non-sports related. The conversation goes
Oh,
completely out
I'm
the
just
rails.
saying, bro. I can believe it, man. We live in a crazy time, man. 2023, different times, man. Different times, man. Locked on Canucks. You're Canucks every day. McDonough, you brought him up. I know he scored a couple goals in the tourney. His shot was looking prominent. That's a good development, and I'm curious to see what he does in Abbotsford. Top 6 role, doing his thing. Can he put up some points?
Yeah, I completely agree. And while I think there's an outside chance, maybe he challenges for a roster spot, I think that's where he belongs. Like, let's see what he can do for most of a
There's
full
no
AHL
chance.
season.
There's no chance. He's not starting with
And
club.
and it's funny too. We both skipped over Atu Ratu playing any NHL games next season. I think it's only going to come if injuries come up, or if he like just outplays Neil Zaman in the minors.
Yeah.
But I think a full season for Atu Ratu in the minors is what's best. Before we get to comment corner, I just want to say I looked up the definition of a spring chicken. Apparently, it's a young chicken for eating that is only available in the spring.
Wow, there you go.
Eating baby chickens, man. What's going on? Anyways,
Dude, don't we eat baby chickens all the time?
like.
What are eggs?
Yeah, maybe. Oh, I was gonna say I like eating lamb, which, anyways, now people might judge us for eating.
No,
young
nobody
animals,
should. No, it's
but
all good. Go. I like eating lamb every once in a while too. It is what it is. Yo, I've said this many times, but I think down the road, I'm definitely gonna turn to a vegetarian. Not for societal reasons, but just because I'm really trying to get to 110 years old. So I think at maybe at 75, I'll just go to an all grass diet and get there.
Hey, you know what else you can do if you want to live to 110 is you could get a Jace case from Jace Medical. Okay, that's called a Segway, baby. Hey, everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace case. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you are not just hoping you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand, baby. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. It's like they do it all, okay? Don't ask them to wash your car. They're already doing enough. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASCmedical.com with the promo code LOCKEDON.
Okay, we're back here on Locked On Canucks. It's your Canucks every day. Trevor Beggs, Kyle Bhawan, talking about everything, man. Learning a lot on this episode, and clearly, I guess I'm on a mission to waive Tanner Pearson, which just sounds harsh. It sounds harsh, man. I know it is what it is, but when I look at Vegas and the Golden Knights, and look at all the moves they made to win a Stanley Cup, you get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying, bro? You protect the top end.
You gotta be ruthless.
Protect the top end. So again, I'm talking to Quinn. I'm talking to Elias. If you're listening to this episode, right, could get you a little mad. It is what it is. They get rid of one of your favorite guys who happens to be, a bottom 6 guy, a guy who, again, might have been one of the worst players in hockey last year while he was playing. It is what it is. I know he's a nice guy, but again, for the third time, it is what it is. Just focus on winning. It can
Focus
happen.
on winning. Do it for Quinn and Elias. Okay. And if you missed yesterday's episode, guess what? We talked about Quinn and Elias. Okay. They're underrated by the East Coast. Okay. That East Coast bias. They don't know what they got in Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes. These two are going to take the NHL by storm next season. We talked about where they slotted in the Athletics rankings, and guess what? We think they're a little undervalued. So again, it's all about winning next season for the Vancouver Canucks. I hope Tanner Pearson earns his way onto the roster and gets his health back. But we'll see how it goes. We did talk about Quinn and Elias yesterday, man. What was the comment of the day? What caught your eye, buddy?
Well, before I get to that, I'm going to ask you another question, bro, because I'm curious, bro. You're the smart guy here, so I got to keep tackling you with these questions because it's a big deal. It's a big deal how this team is going to be cap compliant. Okay, let's say Tanner Pearson and Podkolzin have equally as effective training camps as they possibly could have had and played equally as good in preseason games. Who are you sending down? There's only one right answer. There's only one right answer.
So, the cop-out answer is you're going to send down Podkolzin, but that's a paper transaction because he's a two-way player.
I know.
So, yeah, I mean, between the two, if they play equally, then Podkolzin's got to stay for sure. He'd be papered down for the roster deadline, but he should make the team ahead of Pearson if they have equally good camps.
Good answer, man. Because that sort of development and I know you can't baby these guys. I get what you're saying, right? But for a guy who they clearly want to be a little bit more reckless, aka a lot more confidence, you can help a guy be a little bit more confident by making that call, making a tough decision, and leaning on you on the other end of that spectrum of the tough decision. And this team needs Podkolzin to pan out. There's so many things this team needs. Is one of those things Tanner Pearson at his best? I don't know. For real. Anyway, so let's get to Comment Corner on the show, Locked On Canucks. Trevor Beggs, Kyle Bhawan, a show that, honestly speaking, like if Tanner Pearson is listening to it, he is doing everything to cut the wires of our internet connection here at the Don't Do Studios. It is what it is, okay? Let's get to Comment Corner.
Welcome to Comment Corner, powered by Paraphrasing.
Today's comment comes from our friend Glenn.
The only reason the NHL and the media sleeps on Quinn Hughes and Petey is because the Canucks suck. Who would stay up to watch them closely when you could be on TikTok learning how to cook pasta with chickpeas?
All right. There's that saying, right, Trevor? The truth hurts. And this dude is speaking the truth. He really is. The NHL is sleeping on the Vancouver Canucks and Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes when it comes to comparing them to the rest of the star talent in the league because of not only, them sleeping on the job, these writers that are covering the game, but mainly because they are far from must-see TV. Like nobody enjoys losing hockey. Not just the fan bases who cheer for those teams, but people outside of those regions, like they're not going to go out of their way to stay up to watch a team that's pretty boring, aka not exciting, aka a team that sucks. And you know how we know they suck? It's because they lose games. So you know how we were talking about how Quinn Hughes needs to be showed this Athletic article, and someone needs to tell him, like, yo, by the way, did you know that there are some people out there in the hockey world that would rather take William Nylander and build a franchise around him than you, to piss him off a bit, to light a fire under him? Cool, great. Quinn, you can answer that and say that they're wrong, but at the end of the day, you got to win games, man. You got to lead this team. There's no more excuses. There's nothing. There's nada. Just go out there and prove that you're one of the best players in hockey, and you're paired up with another guy who happens to be one of the best players in hockey. A lot of teams don't have that combination, having one of the best centers in the game and having one of the best defensemen in the game. Make it happen this season.
Yeah, it's got to happen. And, thanks for commenting again, whether you love us or hate us, whether you love or hate the Canucks, it's go Canucks go. Although if you hate the Canucks, I do wonder why you listen to the show.
No, I don't think he hates the Canucks.
Kyle, okay?
I don't think he hates the Canucks. I think
he's realistic. He's realistic. Yeah, it makes sense. Again, this team's been bad for a decade. You run numbers from, records since the beginning of the 2013-14 season. The Canucks are bottom 5 team in the NHL. So, it's a fair comment, right? Maybe people are sleeping on the Canucks, and they will be sleeping on the Canucks until they consistently make some noise. Not just a one-year blip in the bubble playoffs, but consistently make some noise. Hey, before we get out of here, I think this news, we knew it was coming, but it just became official. Notification popped up on my phone. Dave Tomlinson and Ray Ferraro are officially teaming up to replace John Garrett.
What? Not Kyle Bhawan and Trevor Beggs?
I know, man. I know. It's okay, man. And in 20 years from now, we'll be the next Dan Murphy and John Garrett for sure.
Holy.
I don't know if either of us is John Shorthouse, but we'll get there, buddy.
Dude, if I was the voice of the Vancouver Canucks, like color commentator, I feel as if just based on the comments in the past, like there'd be people throwing eggs at the broadcast booth.
I don't know, man. I could see you being a broadcaster, to be honest, just because think about like all the broadcasters in this market. They all have high-pitched voices. John Shorthouse, high-pitched voice.
Really?
Brendan Boucher, high-pitched voice.
Okay.
Scott Rintoul, high-pitched voice, and it was more BC Lions broadcast. But anyways, a lot of broadcasters with high-pitched voices. So anyways.
Can we talk about this for a couple more minutes? Why not, right? West Coast bias, whatever. That's crazy. Like, that's a lot of talent. Like, John Shorthouse and Dave Tomlinson, and then also Ray Ferraro every now and then. Like, dude, if the Canucks are winning games, they're going to be the show. They're going to be the show, or one of the shows in hockey. And I think that's possible, man. Maybe not this year, but
No, this year.
No, that spell, and ultimately, again, the Canucks being one of those cities in the NHL again, one of the hot spots of hockey based on their success, can come to fruition. And I know it's about the product on the ice, but just sprinkling in those details as well. Like, dude, John Shorthouse, he's one of the best in the game. It's like, I don't think that's a bias. That's just the truth. He's too good at his job. Great voice, and also just so good at his job. Not biased as well. Like, he's just a great broadcaster. And then you add in Dan Murphy, who's doing his thing, and then more importantly, like Dave Tomlinson and Ray Ferraro on the play-by-play team. Like, that's like, you can just hear it and see it. That's entertaining. But you got to pair that up with dubs. So the possibility for the Vancouver Canucks to be one of the hottest teams in hockey, making sure, the East Coast is staying up late to watch these games, ditching their families and ditching their wives and husbands to, watch more hockey, is possible, man. I see it. Let's make it happen this season. We'll start that journey this season.
Let's make it happen, and make sure you make it happen by making Locked On Canucks your first listen. I was going to say every day, but towards the end of the day is fine because episodes are dropping at 4:20 p.m.,
Yeah.
baby. We appreciate you tuning in, whether you're an everyday or an occasional listener, or if it's your first time listening. I love this time of year, baby. NFL is back. Hockey is coming back. We got training camp kicking off on Thursday. We got preseason games for the Canucks on Sunday. And coming up for us this week, I do want to talk training camp battles. And we do have our battle against Locked On Senators podcast. Who's going to win the cup first? Who's going to win the debate between the Vancouver Canucks and the Ottawa Senators? But for now, I'm Trevor Beggs. That guy's Cal Bhawan. And you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.